We turn now to a battle playing out in schools across our country. Many educators are rethinking how race and the roots of racism in this country should be tackled in the classroom, while some critics say that the so-called woke movement has gone too far, especially when it impacts their children. ABC's Terry Moran examines this growing flashpoint.
Schools in America are supposed to be places where dreams are born and our children learn to reach for them together. But today, more and more of our schools, like so many other places in American life, have become battlegrounds where the adults are fighting each other furiously over issues of identity, power, and the meaning of our history.
Our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes, but that were villains.
As President Donald Trump, with characteristic bluster and exaggeration, stoked the controversy in the schools. He made local schools a national issue.
We will stop the radical indoctrination of our students and children and restore patriotic education to our schools.
So, what is really happening in our schools?
I think there's a lot of mythology and rumor and confusion, so that people are kind of arguing about things that they are not actually clear on what's happening.
Takima Bunch-Smith is a former New York City school teacher and now executive director of the Center on Culture, Race, and Equity at Bank Street College of Education. She helps schools and other organizations implement equity policies and practices.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
This is really a time, I think, to think about ultimately what kind of world do I want to live in and what kind of a world do my children deserve to live in.
Say his name! George Floyd!
That's an urgent goal in today's America, but how we get there is bitterly dividing school communities, bringing a long-simmering conflict to full boil.
There is definitely an overfixation and obsession with race. You know, in New York City, 50% of our kids aren't even reading at grade proficient level.
Yatin Chu is the mom of a 10-year-old who attends a New York City public school, an immigrant to America from Taiwan, and co-president of Place NYC. That's an advocacy group. Chu thinks this is not where the school's focus should be.
It is infusing a lot of what students are learning in the classroom with discussions about race. I find that to be problematic.
Then there's the fight over what and how kids are taught about social justice and equality and the conceptual tools some schools are using to do that. It's called critical race theory.
Critical race theory is not a bad word, although it may have been demonized for political reasons. The reality is it's about equity. It's about justice.
President Trump actually banned critical race theory from being used by the federal government in racial sensitivity trainings for federal employees.
Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine, holding that America is a wicked and racist nation.
So what is it? There's no strict definition of critical race theory, but basically it's a reformist theory that supports a redistribution of power in institutions by exposing racism and acting to eliminate it.
It's about making sure that every single child gets to thrive and be fully human in everything that they do.
Advocates point to data they say reveal the scope of the racial disparities in our schools. A 2019 report found that 44% of white 8th graders were deemed proficient at math, compared with just 14% of black students and 20% of Hispanic students. And a 2016 report on disciplining practices in schools found that black K-12 students are 3.8 times more likely to receive out-of-school suspensions than white students.
Do you attribute what happened in your kids' lives to racism, either implicit, unconscious, embedded, or otherwise?
Absolutely. It is a matter of unconscious bias.
Pastor Michelle Thomas is a mom of 3 in Loudoun County, Virginia, and the head of the local NAACP. Her kids all went to public schools. Michelle says she had to fight to get her daughter Anna into an advanced science program, even though she had the requisite grades and scores.
Look, you got a great kid that could have been and was in all honors classes, but her mommy had to push. What about all of the mommies that work? What about all the fathers that work that don't have the time to go and fight, that don't have the, temperament to sit and have your child devalued and degraded?
Opponents of this kind of training, they say by focusing on race, it's divisive. It's making people more conscious of it and therefore more racist.
If you had cancer and did not focus on it, you will die. Racism is a cancer that's killing America.
But critics call all that just wokeness run riot. And in New York City's Tony private schools, where tuition for grade schoolers can top $50,000 a year, the battles over it are getting pretty crazy. And some parents are speaking out at the Riverdale Country School in the Bronx.
Children are being taught to see each other as defined by their skin color.
Brian Bartning is an investor in New York and co-founder of the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, which advocates against CRT-based education. Bartning, who describes himself as half Mexican, Native American, and half Jewish, took his 2 young children out of Riverdale when he learned about the equity curriculum.
They didn't look deep enough. They didn't really stop and say, well, is this really achieving our goals?
Bartning says his foundation already has 20,000 members from across the country, parents concerned about the impact of these new ideas on their kids.
When we have a whole bunch of little kids who are told from a very young age that they are defined by their skin color, that you're going to end up with a society where everybody's tribal and everybody is racist.
Our students are not living in a colorblind society.
Scott Ziegler is interim superintendent of the Loudoun County, Virginia School Board outside Washington, D.C. More than 80,000 public school students. And here, too, race and justice in the schools have divided families, with social media threats actually triggering a criminal investigation. Ziegler taught history for 17 years before going into administration, and his view of this swirling controversy is simple.
If I start making decisions based on what adults want, what adults need, I've missed the mark.
You've got a group of parents who have gotten very angry about these efforts, and they're accusing you of political correctness, of trying to impose an ideology on their children.
That's not what we're about. I'm here to do the best that I can for students. My students are telling me that they're having racially charged incidents in our schools, and that tells me I need to do something about that.
And Pastor Michelle Thomas, she's an optimist, believing that all the struggle and debate over these issues will, in the long run, help the country.
We have a great opportunity to elevate the education and the humanity and the citizenship of all of our students.
For ABC News Live, I'm Terry Moran in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.